Good evening. Is that better? Thank you for all coming tonight. We might just wait a few more minutes. This is going to be Zoom accessible tonight, and we're getting that tweaked out right now as well. Thank you all for coming. I'm delighted there's such a big crowd. You never are sure, is anybody going to come to an event or not? And indeed, the island always shows up. And that's one of the great things about being here on Roosevelt Island. My name is Thom Heyer. Many of you don't know me, many of you do. And I have the great privilege of doing a series, hopefully a series of salons on the island that we're going to be doing. This is the first one, and the subject is music. And I've invited two people on the island who come to music from very different points of view. And what I think is important and what I think is fun about being an artist, I'm an artist myself, I love seeing how we relate to one another. And I love seeing how things that seem like they're really different actually can relate to one another. And I think that that is one of the great privileges, like I said, of being an artist. I'm calling all of these a salon. Do you guys know what a salon is, or does anybody have an idea of what a salon is? Huh? Yeah, say it. Okay, let's get.
Well, they're like literary, artistic gatherings.
I've got a smart audience tonight.
fancy houses that they call particular hotel particulier.
Yes. Wow. So, can you help me with this at all?
Salon, I think you know a great deal of gratitude and great deal of gratitude to Thom for coming up with that. This is not your typical concert because you're going to be you're performers as well as we are. That this is the term of describing what we're going to be doing, a conversation, is perfectly accurate. We want to have you ask questions, give answers, participate in creating this expression of this unique community that we happen to be fortunate enough to be partners in.
Definitely. So you guys already are one step ahead, and I wanted to, I was just going to bring Webster's dictionary definition. It's pretty much what you just said. It is a noun and a fashionable assemblage of notables, such as literary figures, artists, and statesmen. So we're all like a group of fashionable assemblages here, which I think is pretty great. And it's usually held at the home of a prominent person. I get to be a prominent person tonight, which is kind of nice. And we've invited you here as a place because my home is too small and cannot fit all of you in it. Also, when we think of the word salon, are there any other connotations that you guys might have of the word salon? Mm-hmm. Does anybody, any other like things that, yeah, Julia?
Came out of some radical new ideas or connections sometimes came out of salons. Audrey talked about Gertrude Stein in Paris.
Yeah. You guys are all pretty highbrow. I was thinking also in terms of a beauty salon or a barbershop. So also when you think of salon, sometimes you might think of like the beauty salon or the barbershop. And what those places traditionally have as well is, I always think of them as a place where women and men literally go to let their hair down. And that this is an informal gathering. And I want you all to be yourselves. And when you go to a beauty salon, sometimes you even go to get yourself a new look. And maybe at the end of tonight, you'll have a new outlook. And that's what we invite you to open your minds at an event like this. Our goal at this salon is to introduce 2 local artists in the field of music, as I said, Roy Eaton, who many of you know, and he is a classical pianist and composer and comes from music from that point of view. And we also have Vince Pierce, who also many of you know here. And Vince is a producer and collaborator of hip hop and rap music. And he comes from music from that point of view. So I'm wondering, will there be any areas that these artists' practice may merge together? And I think we'll hopefully find that out tonight. I would also like to open this circle tonight with a little call and response from all of you. As Roy said, this is going to require a little bit of work from you guys as well. And it requires participation from all of you, and we depend on all of you. And there is a poem I would like to open this up with. It's called My People, and it's by Langston Hughes. And I would like us to do a call and response, if we could, which is I'll say a line and then you say the line back to me, kind of thing, which seems, a call and response seems appropriate for a church, right? So this poem is called My People by Langston Hughes. My People by Langston Hughes.
My people.
The night is beautiful.
The night is beautiful.
So the faces of my people.
So the faces of my people.
The stars are beautiful.
The stars are beautiful.
So the eyes of my people.
So the eyes of my people.
Beautiful also is the sun.
Beautiful also is the sun.
Beautiful also are the souls of my people.
Beautiful also are the souls of my people.
And that's it. Thank you, guys. I think the best way for all of us to get to know Roy and Vince first is by hearing some of their music, of what they do. And we have 2 recordings. When I was kind of studying what they do and kind of looking at their catalog of music that each of them did and trying to find these intersections, I found that they both have a piece of music that uses the word peace in it. And that seemed like a nice place to start out with. And so the first one we're going to listen to, and each of these, we're going to listen to about 2.5 minutes worth of this. And so if you can sit and listen for 2.5 of each of these. The first one is called Peace. It's actually a song that was written by Tito Cruz, who is also here. Give it up for Tito. He wrote the song and Vince produced this. And so, Amanda, if you can play our first song called Peace.
One time for your mind. That's how we do it. I used to be a trigger, walked around with automatics, brainwashed sports from the cellar to the attic. Peace prepared by the word that I heard. More nerves and herbs, too bullets to a curve. React pearls, I had super control. My neighborhood paid me to look after their home. Touch some money, and let them think funny.
It's like the days when you're rolling in the body. This makes the set, the rough next set. Guns and bullets, that's what it's that. No more fair ones, no sweet shots. The reality hits the triggers a killer foul. Generation born this much violent. Let it look, it's a chemic gun society. Violence, okay. Next to sport is violent once more. It's not a black, it's like extra. For real, for real. All about peace, God rest in peace. For real, for real. All about peace, God rest in peace. For real, for real. All about peace, God rest in peace. For real, for real. All about peace, God rest in peace. For real, for real. Now in this millennium, it's all about peace. Even though shorties murder themselves on the street. Just the other day, I was doing the news. Kids are more violent than the 86 crews. Back then before, but now it's the kill. Some folk respect and some folk a drill. It's our fault because we show them the way. Now we gotta change it for a better day. People need to fight, but not with the burner. Life too short to end up like a burger. Use your mentality, or be a technicality. That's confusion, destroy some mentality. Don't be a killer, most killers like with the see it in the corner, work graffiti for the trigger. We the power, and I give it control my environment. Motivate peaceful society. This must change before you enter the seats. All about peace now, rest in peace. Come on. All about peace now, rest in peace. For real, for real. All about peace now, rest in peace. For real, for real. All about peace now, rest in peace.
And now, the next one is called Peace Piece. And it is a song that was written by jazz musician Bill Evans. And we'll hear Roy play this. So how's that for two different views of peace?
Yes, the title of this event is, it says the subject is music, but obviously we are moved by this tremendous creative force that, that allows us to appreciate the beauty of our universe. And also, if I were to ask you, okay, what started this whole thing? Would some of you say it was light? How many of you would say that? Let's raise hands.
Anyone at all?
Yeah. Or how many would say it was what the big conversation is in our world today? Energy. Or obviously, this expression of the beauty of this universe has moved us to express it in music. So when we say the subject is music, we're really talking about the appreciation of a universe that in its creation and its maintenance is motivated by some mysterious creative force.
Roy had mentioned to me also that the notion of what do you think is the earliest form of music, and where did that come from? Remember where you told me about
Yes,
in the beginning was the word,
yes,
and that was perhaps the first spoken
yes.
word rap.
Maybe this universe started with rap. Did you ever think of that? That what our book says in the beginning was the word, and God said, "Let there be light." So before there was light, there was the word, and if I said that the universe began with a rap song, you would think I was off my rocker at first until we re-examine what our scriptures really are saying, and so that the different ways in which we express our appreciation of this ongoing creative force in our universe.
What did you guys think of those first two songs? Were they what you were expecting when you hear the word peace? Any thoughts you might have on it, or do you want to know, Vince, when you and Tito were recording that song, what were some of the things that were going through your head about that?
That is a song that's written a while back, but it's a real relevant song.
Yeah.
Not relevant. What's going on?
Still, absolutely. Well, Tito, one of the things that I like about that song is you see the title and you see it's going to be, it's peace. And then all of a sudden, what I like that both of these have in common is there's a riff underneath that's piano driven. And I loved hearing that. You know, sometimes music is constructed in many ways, and it's made with different patterns. And I love that the start of that you've got this, piano thing going on, and that's under there the whole time. And in Roy's piece as well, you've got this whole bit of and to me, I saw a commonality in both of these pieces, because of that. They have foundations, and music is really interesting to listen to with things like that. And I liked how you chose the piano as the first thing that we're introduced to. And then also with your spoken word, that the really unexpected thing where you say all about peace, not rest in peace. And that was a strong message, I feel like, that when we're thinking of, the notion of peace, God forbid, we're talking about peace, not rest in peace. And a lot of, I know personally, because I know a lot of Vince's work and what he does, and also what the reality poets do. They do a lot of work with anti-gun violence at schools. And so, choosing the word peace as a motif for this, I think is a really brave thing. And it's one of the things that I love about that piece. And in contrast, Roy, with your peace piece that Bill Evans wrote, that's definitely what I expect. It's very meditative. And, what are some of the things that you were drawn to because of that piece of music? You obviously chose it for your album. He has an album called I Play for Peace that I love a lot. And it's a cut from that.
In different times, in different cultural settings, the expression of peace has come from many, many different vantage points. It's just like what you heard in contemporary music, the rap form, which many of us don't really understand, can be just as strong an expression of this concept of peace as the jazz format that Bill Evans used, and perhaps the one that most of us would associate with peace generates from one of the greatest composers in our Western tradition, Bach, in his Prelude.
No, I wanted to, I'll be asking Vince and Roy different questions about like their origins in music, for instance. Vince, I want to ask you guys about early influences of music in your life. And Vince, I know you've told me that your mother's taste in music, her early R&B music you liked, as well as your grandmother was a minister. And so church music, obviously. What are some of those?
Yeah, that's when I was really like first introduced to music and putting guitar to piano and the choir and sing to it was through gospel music. And that was the first bit of music I fell in love with. Gospel music. And my mother playing the the R. Kelly,
Mhm.
and they're all
But the music was
new
good.
edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, the music will always
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that those early influences that we have in our life, they stick with us really well. Um, and I even hear, I was listening to piece earlier in the day, and even part of the structures of that reminded me of, like, we did a call and response earlier, right? We opened the evening with a call and response, and call and response is very based in church history. And specifically the song Peace that you did, and in other works that I've listened that you have of different hip hop music, there's an element of call and response within that. And I wonder if that just even subliminally comes from that early music that you knew with your grandma, because you've got like a conversation back and forth with two different people with the chorus of sometimes, you've got for real, people are like commenting. It's almost like, yes, Lord, in the church when people are speaking. And there's this kind of give and take like that.
I think all genres is inspired by each other, and it's about a similarity.
Mhm. Mhm. No, and I like how people pull those kinds of things into their own music, and sometimes they might not even realize that that's what they're doing. Roy comes. Pardon?
So much of music is a healing and soothing force. The beginning when we're babies, the first thing you bring to soothe your baby is music, is a lullaby. And later on in your life, sometimes the adversity that you're faced with becomes the greatest inspiration for the most beautiful music as a source of healing and peace.
Right. And your early experiences, Roy was 7 years old and he played his first recital at Carnegie Hall. Not so shabby, like, and that you were learning classical music. I think you told me when you were 6.
Yes, yes. And I was inspired by my mother's philosophy that she saw that uh, we obviously, well, myself and my brothers and sisters, had a talent for music, and yet we also had to recognize that as African Americans in America, that this talent would not necessarily be as prized by our fellow Americans as it deserved to be, and that so we had to work, as she put it, produce 2%, 200% in order to get credit for 100%, and that inspired us not to have a stumbling block, but rather a stepping stone for greater accomplishment. And that's how I was encouraged at the age of 6 to apply in a competition and ultimately to win it and to play at Carnegie Hall at the age of 7. And that came out of adversity. And I think that's you know of the rap tradition has come out of similar negative experiences.
Yes,
There's something in common with both of you guys as I got to know Roy just this fall. I knew his music, and we're actually neighbors in a same building, and I admired his work from afar, but I kind of took this opportunity that I was going to nab you for this so that I would get to know you instead of one of those things where you'd think I was a stalker or something if I came up to you and was like, I love your music. And, this was a perfect way to, learn somebody else and find out, what things influence them. You also, I know that family is important to both of you guys. And you have a daughter, Vince?
Yeah,
And how old is she?
14.
Yeah. And I've heard some of your lyrics will refer that with your daughter in there, of wanting to be an example for your daughter and to be alive for your daughter. And
Yeah.
There's, I'm wondering if she could play I Grew Up, the spoken word of that. I like how it has a feel, well, you'll see.
I grew up sugar milk drinking, corned beef hash eating, meatloaf loving, iceberg wearing, BB gun shooting. Only thing that would scare me was the mice. I would run so fast like I was skating on ice. And heat of the night watching. Mama didn't have it, so it was paper food stamps she was collecting. Now I grew up. Got tired of hearing mama ask the landlord for extension. So it was illegal money I was getting. Dice rolling, girl after girl not caring about a feeling. Just worrying about the money and drug dealing. That got me spending plenty of nights in a cage, starting to build up a rage. 23 hours in the cell, thought I was gonna go insane. All I can hear is grandma saying, God will get you through anything. So on my knees I got and prayed. I grew up.
No, I like how you reference your family a lot. I look at your music and I can tell that your family is really important to you.
Yeah.
And Roy has, I saw this in Roy's music as well too. He has an entire album that's called Keyboard Classics for Children. And there's also, he wrote a song to his twin sons. You want to tell us about that? And I was going to have Amanda play that for us. The song is called Ravi Ari, and those are the names of his sons. And let's listen to it a minute, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions about it. Is that okay? Cool.
I'm writing a memoir that'll go into more detail about what the inspiration was for that song. But basically, it was an inspiration that ultimately evolved from an adverse event in my life. Their birth was actually a form of a miracle to give, become a father at the age of 70, which is
Methuselah.
and I would say that my continued usefulness can be attributed to the fact that I had a very near-death experience in 1957, and out of that experience came 10 years of constant pain. And I refused to take medication for this pain. And when I heard of a technique that was being taught on the basis of ancient Vedic tradition called transcendental meditation, I decided to see if maybe that could help me, and it did. Not only did was my pain relieved, but I was given a tool that, in effect, rejuvenated me and enabled me to conceive of these boys when I was 70, with the aid of my beautiful wife, who to be in attendance here. But also, it inspired my understanding and my sharing of the beauty of music that this universe offers to us, both as a creator and as a performer, as something that this pandemic is teaching many people that adversity is not necessarily a negative experience, but it can be an experience of self-discovery.
Definitely. That kind of is a jump off point for me too. I wanted to ask you guys about the pandemic and how, during the pandemic, what part did music play for you during the pandemic, if any? I know some of this. Vince, yeah.
If it wasn't for music during the pandemic, I don't know what I would have done. I definitely don't think I'd be sitting here with a clear mind, being that I live in Kohler. Everything that went on in Kohler during the pandemic, music, to make music, because I was forced to stay on my unit a very big chunk of 2 years span. And yeah, luckily I had access to listen to music.
Yeah, the people don't know here necessarily. Vince has, through Open Doors, there's a whole recording studio at Kohler. And Vince, who normally gets to create music, couldn't even go into the studio.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
must have been really hard. Yeah. Now, and you, what kind of music did you listen to that kept you going?
Oh man.
Do you remember?
They say a bunch of rap that would energize me, to where I couldn't. Everything that was happening around me, life being taken around me, literally. And yeah,
Actually, Roy brought up the other day when we were, all of us were together, of how rap is also a good genre of music to as an outlet for anger too.
Yeah,
And music has all kinds of different functions. Sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes it's happy, sometimes it's dance music, and sometimes it can be an outlet for our frustrations. And Roy pointed that out to me. I thought that was a really a cool point of that.
well, I think that many of you might know me primarily, not as a classical pianist, but by virtue of the advertising, the work that I did. And actually, a jingle that I wrote for Newsweek magazine has, with a slight change, a particular value and pertinence in how to deal with this pandemic crisis that we are going through. And at the time, these lyrics were referring to Vietnam or war and the crisis between Israel and Egypt and many other negative events that were happening at that period. And the lyric that I was inspired to write with slight change really expresses how to approach an event like this. And there is joy inside the sadness. There is love in all the madness. Feel the joy, touch the soul. Worry about tomorrow. See with eyes of love the world in your hands.
Well, you had also told me about an ad campaign that he did with Nina Simone.
Well,
I was wondering if you could tell them about that.
yes.
Since Nina Simone was an amazing singer and also very controversial at her time, and she was also trained initially as a classical pianist, just like you. And I know that influenced her work a lot. Can you tell them about that?
Oh, yes.
That was ill-fated.
This is one of my. Well, I got very many positive experiences out of my advertising career. And this was a tricky one. I wrote this jingle for Nina Simone because I felt her voice expressed so perfectly the lyric that I had written for U-Band Coffee. Deep, dark, delicious U-Band. Her voice is deep, dark, and delicious. Unfortunately, the account executive did not see it that way. He said, "Hey, is that a man or a woman singing?" And you remember her voice is very deep. And I said, "Well, that's the whole point. The ambiguity of her voice fit perfectly with the message we're trying to communicate." But he said, "No, it sounds too black. You can't use it." And so it ended up being sung by a white singer, but it was written to Nina Simone.
Yeah. And then you had like the perfect deep, dark, delicious voice
Yes.
for that. And they certainly weren't ready for that at that time. Probably would have been a super hit commercial now. And like Nina Simone is an example of channeling her anger too.
Yes.
Her song Mississippi Goddamn
Yes.
is an angry song and an amazing song, and a
Yes.
brave song.
She demonstrated the value of the concept that I had developed in Music Magazine, that there is joy beside the sadness, there's love in all the madness. So feel the joy, touch the sorrow, share a dream about tomorrow. See with eyes of love the world in your hand. You have the ability, by how you see, from where you see your world, to experience the beauty that is at the base of all that is. And that music so effectively demonstrates. We consider ourselves a superior species, and yet the range in which we can appreciate the music that is all around us is much limited compared to what a whale, for example, can hear her mate 1,000 miles away in the water, or an elephant can detect the sounds in equal.
And their feet, they can hear it like in their feet, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I wish that we could, you know, our whole bodies were that.
And even with our advanced, we use detecting devices. We realize that the rocks are speaking. In effect, they have a specific vibration that differentiates one rock from another. That a tree can tell which trees in the vicinity have grown from their seed.
Yeah, there's language in really interesting ways, you know,
Yes.
all over the universe in a way. You know, I love that.
And that we have a very limited sphere of sensitivity, and yet how wonderful that limited sphere has produced such beauty.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys too. I know that Roy, you're eternally curious, which I love about you. Actually, the other day when we were, I met him. He brought me down the paper and was like, "Did you read this article?" And I was like, "No, I hadn't read it yet." And so, like, Roy brings me this article that was in the paper on Little Baby, and that was not what I was expecting from my 92-year-old friend. He was like, "Have you read this article on Little Baby, the rapper, and what he's, you know, doing and what his music is like?" And I was like, "No, but I guess I better learn." And, you know, I like that both of you are curious about stuff, and that, you know, and that kind of curiosity feeds your music. I think that it feeds your willingness to engage in your community and try to bring areas of understanding. I know that Open Doors does a lot of work with, you know, anti-gun violence, and just does a lot of work to just try and connect with the community, which I think it's a lovely thing. And that's what I hope these events, will continue to be. I wanted to ask you about some of what you're working on now and where that's headed. I know that you have this project called Zane. Do you want to tell them?
Yes, I have a project called Thing that I started before the pandemic, and it was to bring youth that couldn't afford to be in the studio, teaching music production, pay them to be there, and how to record themselves with the music. But due to the pandemic, I had to stop because they couldn't no longer come inside the nursing home. So we had an idea to start a virtual art showcase called Guns Down, Mic Up. And we've been doing it, right, about to be 2 years next month.
Time flies.
And just thinking about it, how fast time flies. And we do it every other Friday. And we give out equipment, gift cards to 3 winners. And it's been going great.
Yeah.
Giving people a platform,
Nice.
not only express themselves, but taking a safe space,
Mhm.
talk about topics that you might not talk about with other people.
Or their parents.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I like that music can, where it can work as a tool to help people out. And I think that I like what, you are very in tune with kids and wanting to make sure that they have outlets in a good way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So they can be in the studio for an hour or two. And who knows, that could save them from being in the streets or anywhere getting in trouble.
And you have a podcast, or you're starting one, or?
Yeah, we're starting a podcast. My co-host over there.
All right, Bob.
It's going to be video on our YouTube channel.
Not that you stay remarkably busy, and my hat's off to you for that. You're many things. Lazy is not one of them. Definitely. And I think that these are really wonderful programs. I know that Roy also, your curious mind keeps moving, and you are working on a memoir.
Yes,
As one of your things.
and one of the things that I discovered sort of accidentally is that the visions we've made in our music, this is classical and this is baroque and this is impressionistic and so on, really are denying a common link between music of all ages. And I accidentally came upon a link between Chopin and Joplin were playing the opening of Chopin Impromptu. Now that could either continue. Or I found that same opening could be the opening to Joplin's Solace. And that in turn could lead us back to peace. And strangely enough, or not strangely enough, the format that Bill Evans used to make Peace Feast is the same format that Chopin used to make the Berceuse. A ground, a bass. And then a variation in the melody. So Chopin was a jazz composer before there was jazz.
No, I love how you see relationships, how things relate. I think you guys have a lot on your plate to keep you going. I don't worry about either one of you. And I was wondering if we wanted to open up the floor if anybody had any questions of this, you guys. And Laura, if you have the mic to, if anybody has any questions. Yeah, Julia.
I don't have a question, but I recently learned that in talking about peace, well, I work at a school where they talk about peace a lot, and we had a counselor years ago who tried to make the slogan "Peace is power," and then recently I learned that in indigenous wisdom, the warrior is the one who protects, not the one who attacks. And I thought about that with you guys at Open Doors, because you guys are always protecting and speaking up for people who can't speak, or protecting kids from things that happen to you. So I just wanted to mention that when you guys were talking about peace, this idea of not resting, that's not really what peace is about. So it's kind of cool. I'd like to know if Vince has any questions for us, or for Roy.
You have to come back.
Yeah, Jane?
Yeah, Vin, I have a question for Vince. You said your name of your podcast or what you're doing, Zing?
No, no, no.
What is Zing?
Two different things.
Okay, I
Okay.
got that confused.
Yeah, Bing is a project I started in 2019 where I was bringing kids.
Oh, that's Zing.
Yeah.
Okay, where did that word come, why that word?
Why that word? At first, we was trying to label it as like a school, Zing for composing,
Oh,
and yeah.
glad I asked.
Good night. Stephen, you had a question?
Yeah, a comment and a question. I would just want to go back to Tito and Vince's hip hop piece. To me, the bass was like this womb-like universe, like this omniscient sort of force, and then all the higher notes, not just the dialogue, but the musical higher notes were all like dialogue coming out of that. And that is just a personal impression, but I'm curious what you think of what I just said. Does it mean anything, or are you thinking something completely different?
No, it definitely means something. Basically, you're asking me, how did I get it to sound like that? Yeah, definitely. I like a lot of bass. For some reason, I don't know why, but I love like to hear bass, especially with a strong message, I would say. And I feel like even if you don't listen to rap, listen to beat, but also get the message out of it.
Which comes to you in what order, the words or the beat first, or does it?
Well, actually, I made the beat first. Then Peter was just listening to it, and Peter has a book of just raps. He said, "This is the one."
Nice. You guys were a good match. Anybody else have any questions or comments or of our neighbors?
On the piece that Roy was playing, the bass on the piano is amazing. I just, when you feel that bass, that boom, you know what I mean? I can feel it in my bones when you play it, you know what I mean? That bass line is very catchy.
Could you hear what he said?
Totally.
He was referring to the bass line of Peace.
Yes, yes.
And how that really spoke to him, that he could even feel it in his body.
Yeah.
Thumbs up to that.
Marianne, I just thank you for organizing this sort of
No.
premiere of Salon. Now, I just wonder if Roy, Vincent, and Tito have ever met before, and if you would envisage maybe composing something together for a coming Salon.
Well, this is not our first time meeting, but we just met weeks ago, and to find out how connected he was to Kohler, from having a son that used to be a resident at Kohler, was
Yeah, this is his son David, actually, who was a resident of Kohler. Yeah. And knew Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was up at the same time.
Cool.
Yeah, I was at the same time.
No, what's been nice is that, like in about 2 seconds, you find out, if you actually bother to sit down with your neighbors, that there's some really interesting people in our community. And actually, Stephen and I were at an event the other night. Actually, Sandy, this was at the Morgan, where I found out a friend of mine, Vanessa and little Ashley's mother was at Goldwater, yes? Yeah. Found out that another friend of mine, their mother had been in Goldwater when it was still here. And found that out the other night at like an art opening. There's like the weirdest ways that things connect. And Stephen, my husband, just met David, Roy's son tonight. And because his son went to Princeton, he knew Stephen's dad at Princeton. And
Yeah, I mentioned that before.
I know, right?
It's a small world.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions or comments or, yeah.
Just sharing a personal story. I had a migraine last night and I listened on Spotify to Roy playing Chopin. It was gone. So I highly recommend to all neighbors Chopin Meditation by Roy Eaton for any headaches.
Yeah, check out, both of them have music on Spotify. And it's a wonderful, thing to be able to tap into. I don't have your CD, but I want to actually get a hard copy as a CD. I have 3 CDs of Roy's because I'm totally old school. And anybody who's ever been on Zoom with me, you see all my CDs in the back of my head when we're on Zoom. And, those are lovely things. And actually, Roy's music before, one of the first things I told him when I met him was that for me during the pandemic, one of his albums, I Play for Peace, was very comforting to me. And I used to listen to that during the pandemic. And, like we talked about, was there anything that you listened to that was helpful? And that particular album I really loved, and it made me then seek out more of his music and get on Amazon and see what other things do you have.
I haven't recorded this yet, but I was inspired by the pandemic to write a piece that was inspired by a Negro spiritual called Little Baby Play on Your Heart, and that I called
You said you called it Psalm 2020,
Psalm
was it?
2020,
Do you want to
yeah.
play a little bit of that? He stayed prolific. Pretty impressive. Well, Any other, I don't want to cut off anybody. If anybody else has, yeah, Lauren?
Just a question for Vince. I just wonder what your creative process is when you're starting, like you're starting to produce something, like what's your jumping off point? Is it different for different things? Or?
Yeah, it's definitely speaking on is definitely depending on the mood. And I would start off with drum and then just add everything in, just depending on my mood. Like if I'm feeling sad, the beat might sound dark. If I'm feeling happy, it might make you bob your head a little bit. But yeah.
How about you? What inspires you when you write? What inspires you when you write? Wait, let me check your mic here.
The connection that I make twice a day when I meditate with everything and everyone in this universe that we share, that I feel a connection, a oneness with this infinite creative force. A teacher described it like if you would describe the creative force like a tremendous infinite ocean, you are waves in that ocean, and as such, and I have access to that same creative power that started the universe and that continues to maintain it in all of its beauty and wonder and joy.
No, and I love that wave metaphor. I mean, we're lucky enough to live on Roosevelt Island where we have a lot of water. You know, we're a little island, and so we're surrounded by water. And I love how that feeds us. We're really lucky. We're lucky.
Can I just also say, Roy, that piece for your son, your twin son, Robbie and Ari, is gorgeous. It's really moving. Is that also on Spotify?
It is. She said she really likes your piece, Ravi and Ravi Ari.
Oh yes,
And it is on Spotify.
yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? I'd like to thank all of you for coming. This was a lovely turnout, and I couldn't have been happier with getting to present two really great people on our island. So thank you all, and thank you, Vince.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank every wave in this
Every one of you waves.
infinite ocean. And I hope that you will all continue to express your unique contribution to this wonderful world that we share.
With your inspiration, we will.